Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Tariffs to me. Finally, someone other than Donald Trump and Howard Lutnick talking to all of you about tariffs. We have a really good program for you with some special guests, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Chris Murphy, here to break down a lot of what's going on with tariffs. We also are going to be joined by Roxane Gay, Sarah Mora, and Dominique Broadway. But basically, what we're dealing with is Trump promised these tariffs. He also promised that prices would go down, right? He was always talking about groceries. And what we're really seeing is this economic plan, which largely relies on tariffs to bring in money by the External Revenue Service. Over this past week, we've found out that Trump knows very well it's American companies that will be paying the price of these tariffs. And he admitted that he would like for Walmart to eat those costs. So he knows that companies are going to be raising prices to cover these tariffs. And so he ran on bringing prices down, and now he has an economic policy that is just squeezing the working class. And we've been in situations before where we've had the very wealthy in America try to push policies that hurt working people and enrich the wealthiest members of our society while making the working class worse off. And what has changed this has been an energized citizenry coming together and saying we're not okay with this. And that's kind of why we're all on this call together. So you can go on moveon.org/action to send a letter to your member of Congress calling on them to take legislative action against the Trump tariff. So that's a huge thing you can do. If we all do it together, it'll be like a really big deal. They'll all notice it at the same time, and it'll make a big difference. And also, as we're doing this live stream, if you join the YouTube chat, you can be included in the stream. We can see your comments and what you say. But for now, we're going to go over to a couple of our panelists, Roxane Gay and Dominique Broadway. How are you doing? Welcome to Talk Tariffs to me.
I'm good. How are you today? Thanks for having me.
We're good. We're excited. So let's start with you, Roxane. These tariffs are going to affect our lives and our jobs and all of the industries we work in ways that we can imagine and also very unimaginable ways. So can you say how this is going to impact readers and authors? Where do books come from?
Well, when a writer and a pen love each other very much, what a lot of people don't realize is where books are actually printed. And like many things, publishing has outsourced the work of printing books to China primarily. And so when we talk about tariffs, and especially the exorbitant tariffs that are being levied against China, we are talking about how the price of books, which is already quite high, is only going to get more expensive. Now, of course, we have libraries, but the books are also going to become more expensive for libraries. And so it's going to affect readers. It's especially going to affect writers who are already trying to eke out an existence. And well beyond writers, it's going to affect all of us because almost everything that we touch in our day-to-day lives is coming from a different country.
And so when you think about publishing a book, you have to consider the fact that it might not go to print and then it's only going to be available online. Does this give the tech companies more control over what ideas are getting out? Is that something you're thinking about if hard
No,
copy books become inaccessible?
they won't become inaccessible only because, every few years or so, people start to wring their hands about the death of the book, but it's been around for millennia. Books are going to actually be okay. Books are going to continue to be printed. And we won't see a situation where books are primarily ebooks simply because more people read physical books by far than ebooks. But what it does mean is that fewer books are going to be bought because it's more expensive to produce those books. It does mean that authors are going to generally start selling fewer books. And so it's really going to affect the quality and the quantity of the books that we see. And tech companies, of course, control everything in some insidious way or another, but they aren't going to control literature. We know that.
Yeah, I'm one of the people that refuses to be an audibler. I just can't do it. I need to hold it. I need to flip the page. I don't know if it's just me. I think we're a dying bunch. Everyone wants to do it online. But speaking of things getting more expensive, I want to bring Dominique in to this conversation. How is your financial advice, both to your formal clients and also just like informally to your followers online, changed since Trump's massive Liberation Day on April 2nd, since this tariff policy has really taken shape?
Yeah, well, first up, don't be too hard on the Audible book. My book is on Audible, but I am the person that literally will purchase a hard copy of the book and still listen to it on Audible because it's supposed to be like a hack to absorb the information. So, we still need our Audible books. But yeah, so essentially what I've been telling my community is that, tariffs for a lot of people, they feel like it's something that only economists need to worry about. And that's not true, right? They actually will hit all of us like in our wallets directly. So since Trump's tariff policy really started making headlines, I've had to kind of shift the way that I talk to my community and basically breaking it down like this. Like, hey, tariffs are basically a tax on imports. And when companies pay more to bring stuff in, guess who ends up footing the bill? Us, right? So prices go up, inflation sticks around, and that really changes how we need to move with our money. So I've basically been doubling down pretty much on two areas or two things. So one, education for sure, and really just helping people understand how global policy actually impacts their everyday life and investment. So I'm not just talking about like the headlines, but really connecting the dots between tariffs and higher grocery bills and all the other things we pay for, and also why certain stocks might be struggling as well as a result of the tariffs, and then also diversifying. So I think the diversification, really emphasizing that, like if you're only investing in companies that are super heavily exposed to these tariffs, then you are going to be taking on a lot more risk than you may realize, right? So I've also been encouraging people to diversify. That could be adding international stocks, exploring different sectors, and just looking at some of their favorite companies that they have and how they're going to be directly impacted by the tariffs. But at the end of the day, the goal is still the same, right? To protect the money we have, grow it. And, we can't control the policies, but we can really, try to control how prepared we are when these shifts do change.
And what are you noticing in the comments? Are people being more risk averse and trying to save more because they're scared of what is looming once we start to see less shipments coming in and these prices really going up? Are you noticing people in the comments saying, I'm changing my behavior economically, financially speaking?
Yeah, yeah. I know people always kind of joke about like the eggs, and that's not even being imported in, but like, that has already been a thing. But no, I definitely have seen people saying like, "Hey, I'm cutting back in certain areas," or I've already seen the cost of things going up. And I think the biggest thing I've been seeing a lot, Jessica, honestly, is business owners saying that they're already seeing how this is going to affect their bottom line. And some people are like, "Hey, I was launching this thing, and I decided to pause until this tariff stuff figures itself out because there's not going to be any profit for us, or we're not going to be able to charge these inflated prices to our ideal customer."
Now, Roxanne, you're an author. You think about, the ideas, communicating things to people. Are you finding that tariffs, which I think it's a word not a lot of people understood. We saw the Google searches for it skyrocket after Trump was elected. And people are kind of joking around that this is happening in areas where people largely voted for Trump. But I looked into the Google trend. There were a lot of searches in DC. So even the people that are responsible for making policy in the country were wondering exactly what tariffs were. What do you make of this being an idea that's hard to communicate? It seems like this weird niche economic subject, but it's affecting everyone. As a writer, what do you make of the word and how it's hard to talk about?
Well, I think there are a few things going on. One, people are unfamiliar with tariffs because a lot of younger people don't remember previous trade wars. We also see the president using the word tariffs to mean something else. And so I think a lot of people are trying to verify their understanding of what a tariff is versus what they're being told from the regime and their various cronies. And so there's a lot of confusion that's being generated, and this administration has predicated a lot of their power on deliberately confusing an uninformed electorate. And so people are trying to fill in those gaps and make sense for themselves of what a tariff is and how it will affect their own lives. Because to hear the president tell it, these big, beautiful tariffs, which like I won't even go there, but they are not going to benefit us. They are not going to be absorbed by foreign powers. Sorry, I'm in New York. Um, you know, they're going to be absorbed by American taxpayers. And really, what we're seeing is a tax increase. And the more that we get that message out, because it is the truth, the better off we will all be so that people really understand what they voted for in some cases and what they voted against in others.
Now, Dominique, I want to go to you. Something I've said a lot is why prices are going up is in part because a lot of the biggest corporations in America, they're importing whether it's raw materials and they're manufacturing in the US or they're selling something from overseas. But a lot of these big corporations care about their stock valuation on Wall Street. They promise steady earnings reports where revenue will remain the same, profit margins will remain the same. And when they incur this sudden cost, whether it's 10% or 30% more on what they're importing, they tend to want to keep the profit margin exactly what they promised to their shareholders and have those steady returns. And so that's what I've been telling people as it's a contributing factor as to why prices go up, that a lot of these companies are beholden to Wall Street. Do you talk about this on your page? How do you see Wall Street's influence on these price increases?
Yeah, it is interesting that, a lot of these companies they're like, hey, I have to, we want to be able to satisfy the street, as they say, right? Satisfy our investors. And so it's something that I think a lot of times the average everyday person that isn't like obsessed with the stock market like myself doesn't really truly understand, right? So when these earnings reports are coming out, it's been really interesting as we're in Q2, but hearing the Q1 earnings report coming out and they may say, hey, we had a great earnings for Q1, but our outlook for the next quarter is bleak. And that is because of the upcoming tariffs. And I think that it kind of helps to the way I try to explain it to people. Now you understand that, yes, Q1 may have been great profit wise for this organization or for this company, but the CEOs are concerned about their future profits, So I think that the relation between the two is going to be interesting. But that's also, as we're saying, Jessica, that's why the cost will typically get passed on to us, the end consumer, right? And so now the end consumer, now we have to pay the 20% more, et cetera, to try to help the companies keep their profit margins. But however, then that could also obviously lead to a reduction in sales overall. So it really won't pan out, right? Unless they're normal everyday essentials that people just absolutely cannot purchase or, cannot live without, I would say. So yeah.
I talked to one investor who said the day after Liberation Day that many people were liberated from a chunk of their 401ks. Can you talk about what it was like that day, the impact on the stock market of this crazy
Listen,
announcement?
yes, I was like, what? Just watching the net worth drop, my net worth drop, my daughters who are 3 and 5, their little net worth were dropping. It was really interesting just to see like this impact. But it did create, there is this buying opportunity as well, right? But unfortunately, most people don't have a bunch of extra cash on hand to go and then start buying more. That does, like I said, it did create this discount day and discount, few days, honestly, and weeks. But yeah, it did not. Like I said, most people just don't have the extra cash on hand to take advantage of it.
That's so interesting. I feel like, yeah, communicating this to the public is fascinating. My partner's dad is looking at his 401k and asking, Jessica, what should I do with it? I'm like, I don't know. I think one of the biggest problems with this administration is we don't know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. The tariff policy is changing
Yeah.
constantly, and that kind of
It,
environment
mhm.
makes it hard for business. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it does. And I would just say really quickly, that's been the biggest thing I've been telling like our community is that we don't know what's gonna happen. If anyone says they know exactly what's gonna happen, they're a liar. Like every day I'm kind of just sitting and waiting, like, what is he gonna say? What's gonna happen? And you don't know, and you have to pivot quickly. So even myself, like, oh, we can plan our content out for weeks. Like we can't, we need to make content like every day and change it because things are changing every day. So, none of us have a crystal ball, but I do think we have to be a lot more observant with the news and with the financial markets than ever before because things are shifting. They're shifting very fast.
Now, Roxanne, I want to go back to you. Do you have any like books coming up that you've noticed, it's directly affecting your work or any other authors about books going to print?
Not yet. These
Yeah.
things are going to take some time. And like Dominique so well said, everything is changing from one minute to the next. So we can't even plan or prepare. And books have a long runway. In general, you have a year between a year or more, I should say, between when you sell a book and when it appears on shelves. And because printers are in such high demand, it takes months and months to even get in the publishing queue to be printed. And so right now, everything has already been sort of locked in for a while. We are going to start to really see how it affects writers in next year, perhaps, or late Q4 this year. It's a ways away. But where it's really affecting writers is in terms of journalism, in terms of publishing in magazines, in terms of anywhere that is dependent on advertising dollars or consumer dollars to somehow generate the funds to pay for writers. And so we're seeing it more in freelance publishing and magazine and newspaper publishing than we are in books. And that's been happening for a very long time, but a lot of businesses, both within publishing and beyond, are taking this as cover for doing the kinds of things they have long wanted to do, like raise prices. I think in a lot of communities, you can see prices are going up, even though the real effects of tariffs have not really started yet. And they're blaming the tariffs because they can, because the president is mercurial. Well, that's the polite word for it. And is changing his policies from not only one day to the next, but sometimes 1 hour to the next. I don't even know that he's familiar with his policies at this point. And so it's really hard to know what you can rely on and what's going to happen with your work. And some of us are going to be able to weather the insecurity and the uncertainty. And unfortunately, the most vulnerable Americans and well beyond our borders are not going to be able to weather these changes because their day-to-day lives are going to be affected in very material ways.
Yeah, that's really well said, Roxanne. I know you have to hop, but thank you for joining us. You have a busy schedule. Thanks for taking the time out of your day.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Have a great day.
Now I get to pick Dominique's brain a little bit more. So, the question I get the most from my followers as someone who makes economic content is like, is this going to cause a recession? Are we going to be in a recession? How are you handling that question right now?
Well, I unfortunately have had to often say I don't know. And it's so weird,
Yeah.
you want to be like, oh, I'm an expert. It's like, I really don't know what's gonna happen. But I do know that we've obviously been through in my life been through a recession before. And I think my biggest thing is we don't know what's gonna happen, so let's be prepared, right? So even if a recession does occur and things, start to take a hit, if we're prepared, it won't matter as much, right? So I always say just like don't continue on as normal. You are gonna have to make some shifts. That may mean reducing some expenses. That may mean, really evaluating where is your income sources. Do they need to be increased or shifted? Maybe even reevaluating your assets, as I mentioned earlier, diversifying the investments you have so that you're ready, right? So, that's the goal. I mean, honestly, in life in general, right? As long as you're ready and prepared for whatever comes, you feel better. But for a lot of people, there's so much uncertainty because they aren't ready, right? A lot of people are still rebuilding from COVID and all the various things that are constantly happening in life. And so I think that that's a lot of the fear where they're like, we're just really bouncing back from this last pandemic and all the things that happened. So how do we try to get ready for the next go around? But like I said, I'm just telling everyone, just be prepared. Try to have your emergency fund in place, have your investments going, but just have those things in place so that if things do take a downturn, you are prepared and not affected too much.
Something I think a lot of people think about is we're about to have Medicaid potentially cut, SNAP benefits, all these social programs people rely on. If those go away, that's going to be a huge drain on working class people's income, middle America's income. And right now, I've seen statistics that say it's as much as 60% of the country that's struggling to pay for their most basic necessities. And so people want to get ahead. I'm one of the rare cases in America where I'm socially mobile. And I think about the first time I ever had money in a savings account. There are some people that are working, 60 plus hours a week in the richest country in the world, and they're still not doing well. And now these tariffs are going to raise prices on them while programs they rely on are being cut. I mean, how do you see this affecting people at the very household level?
Yeah, the interesting thing is it's already affecting, people are already affected. And that is really just because of the rise of inflation over the last couple of years. So that has already, taken a toll on people just going to the grocery store, buying diapers, buying gas, all the normal things have already started to go up. So my concern is that, the most people still can't handle a $500 emergency. And that has been a common statistic for years. And unfortunately, it's still a thing, right? In 2025. And so I feel like with this constant drain on income, like I said, people haven't really bounced back from when inflation really took off. So I think it's honestly going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I think a lot of these benefits, if they're cut, it's going to make just the economy in a way worse shape than what people may even actually be preparing themselves for, which is why a lot of these programs are so important. They are needed. And I'm hoping that it's not a situation where they all get cut, then the economy takes a hit. We realize exactly, this is bad, and then they have to try to bring them back. It just kind of creates a lot of unnecessary problems. So it is something that I think is to be, on the lookout for, and it's kind of scary from that aspect for sure.
I really appreciate you breaking this down. A lot of people think that because I know economic policy, I know finance. I'm like, those are not the same thing. So I have learned a lot from you. We're not
Totally
done with you
different.
yet,
Thank you.
but really appreciate it. We're going to turn to
Thank you.
Senator Chris Murphy for a bit. Senator Warren is going to be joining in just a moment, but thanks so much for coming on, Senator Murphy.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, as someone who grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, some of your turf, it is
Right
good to
on.
talk to you. I'm sorry I
Yeah.
left, but appreciate the
There's
work
still
you do.
time. There's still time. You got a lot of life to live to make up for the mistakes of leaving that next state.
Yeah, I regret saying that now. Thanks, Senator Murphy. I'll make my way back home. But yeah, I think, you come from this from an interesting angle as someone who focuses a lot on international policy. Can you say how Trump's tariffs are playing out in Congress?
Well, I mean, I guess what I really know is how they're playing out in my state. The fact of the matter is, nobody knows what the future holds. So businesses are holding back on investment. A lot of consumers, are paring back their spending plans for the year. Both owner and consumer confidence is in the toilet. And I guess what really confuses my folks most is that, it feels like if you've got, access to billions of dollars, you can buy your way out of these tariffs. Tim Cook got, one of the first big exemptions to the tariffs, and that can't be coincidental to the fact that he, put $1 million in the pocket of Trump for his inauguration. So, in Connecticut, a lot of, small actors feel like, well, they're going to get screwed by these tariffs. Well, the big actors are going to find a way to get around the tariffs. And I think, that word is out in the international community as well. Trump just comes back from this big Middle East trip in which he basically makes it plain to everybody that he can be bought. You can pay him off with a private jet or a big investment in his crypto companies, and you can get what you want. Now, in the case of these sort of oil, petro dictatorships, they're not necessarily looking for tariff relief as much as they're, looking for security concessions. But other countries are going to, get wise to this, and they're going to start doing business deals with Trump, and then in the back door say, "Hey, listen, can you talk to me about the tariff?" So it's terrible for our economy, but it's a corruption scheme. First and foremost, it's another mechanism for Trump to get rich, for his political interests to get, stronger. And I think that that's what's, driving a lot of the animosity back in Connecticut and all across the country is not just it's going to cost jobs. It's not just going to limit investment, but it's also just going to sort of continue to fuel this disparity between the haves who can afford to bribe Trump and the have-nots who, can't get a foot in the door.
Yeah, so we talk about it domestically like it's making the richest people in the country richer and the poorest people poorer, but at the international level we're seeing that with entire countries, that the ones who can afford to bribe him are getting more favorable trade policies and the ones who can't are kind of getting left behind.
Well, and also that these countries are, going to start going to partnerships with nations that can give them more stability. I mean, obviously no trading partner of the United States today has any idea what the rules are today, tomorrow, next month. And then you got China sitting there who says, listen, I can at least give you stability, right? Yeah, we may cheat a little bit more than the other countries do, but at least I can give you some certainty. The deal you have with me, the tariff rates, the tax rates, the regulatory treatment, it's going to be the same today as it is a year from now. And so you will have more and more countries who just decide to cut a different deal, probably with the Chinese. That's terrible for the US economy. It's terrible for US companies. Instability in this global environment, ultimately benefits Beijing.
I want to bring in Senator Elizabeth Warren, who comes at this from the angle of focusing on a lot of, banking regulation, financial regulation, making economic policy. What are you seeing? How is Congress handling these tariffs?
So I apologize for being a couple of minutes late. We're having some technical difficulties. But I think that Senator Murphy has identified the problem, and what we're all trying to do is figure out what's going to be the fallout from this. So when you have a tariff policy that is like a giant game of red light, green light, it's like they're playing Squid Games here. And they keep flashing the light up. And at one moment, your tariff is 10% for everybody across the board on every product. And then the next moment, no, it went up to 30%. And then for that one over there, it went up to 100%. And then that one, oh, we're creating an exception, and it goes down. As Senator Murphy said, that instability means a lot of partners around the world say, not me, man, I'm going somewhere else. But focus for just a minute on what it means here in the US. We kept talking about the whole setup for this was that we wanted more manufacturing jobs here in the United States. We want to onshore more of our critical supply chains. So put yourself in the position of you're somebody who's thinking about where you're going to invest some money. You're going to have to borrow some money to do it, a few $1,000,000. You could use that money to build a factory here in the United States. You could use it to upgrade an old factory that's not at maximum capacity. You could use it to buy new tools so you could really manufacture at scale. You could use it to bring in and start to train a workforce that could really manage. But to do any of that, you realize you're not going to get your money back in the first hour. You're not going to get your money back even in the first year. It's going to take an arc of time before you're going to get your money back. So you got to make the best guess you can about what's it going to look like in terms of what am I going to have to pay to get the raw materials I need to be able to manufacture what I want to manufacture here. And what's my market going to look like on the other end? And what Trump has said is if any part of your trying to make this thing involves reaching out overseas and bringing that stuff in, and that means anything from raw materials to a particular chip to precision tools, if you have to bring that in from somewhere else, when you get ready to bring it in, your costs may be here, or then again, they may be here, or then again, they may be here, or they may be back down here. Nobody can plan around that. And as people in the manufacturing industry say, you're only as strong as the weakest link in your supply chain. It doesn't do you any good to have 99% of what it takes to build this thing if the critical chip that you need isn't there. So that's on the front end. Same kind of thing happens on the back end. If there's a reciprocal tariff, a retaliatory tariff, where the place you were planning to be able to export to says, man, we're not letting stuff come in from the United States because Donald Trump has slapped a 10%, 30%, 100% tariff on us, then your whole plan for how much you were going to spend to make this and how much you were going to be able to sell it for has just turned upside down. The reason I know all this is because I literally am getting the calls from modest manufacturing outfits in Massachusetts who are telling me, some are saying they're screwed on one end, some are saying they're screwed on the other, and the calls that are the most frantic say they're screwed on both ends. And the reason I identify all this is not helping us build a stronger economic future. It literally is like taking an axe and chopping down whatever future we might have had in this area. And that's true. These are just truths about how it works. Whether you're trying to manufacture machine goods, automobiles, or you're trying to manufacture drugs here in the United States, bring that onshore, manufacturing the pills that we need, the heart medications that we need, the antibiotics that we need. So what Donald Trump is doing is making the growth of our economy much harder. He is actually pressing down on growth. Now, think about what that's going to mean for the American family, because this is where you get right into the heart of the stuff I do. And that's going to be fewer people with jobs. We get that. That's going to mean when you get fewer people with jobs, wages do not keep climbing. Wages either flatten or start to go down. And those tariffs on pretty much everything, pretty much from everywhere, pretty much across the board, are going to be driving prices up. So prices go up, inflation goes up, jobs go down. And who's really going to feel this recession? It's just going to be hardworking families that are just trying to make it from one week to the next. So here's Donald Trump off doing his tweets, tariff by tweet. And the consequence is like a punch in the gut to every working family in this country.
In some aspects, I do wish his Truth Social posts were actually the law, because when he said he wants Walmart to eat the tariffs, I was talking about this with my boyfriend. He's like, well, that's kind of a corporate profit tax, isn't it? Except it's so ineffective because it's not at all enforceable. But maybe if we just tell Trump that there's an easier way to do this and have Walmart pay a tax, he'll halt the tariffs. But I want to ask this question to both of you. I'll start with you, Senator Warren. Is there a way for Congress to halt these tariffs?
So, yes. It's like known as the Constitution of the United States. And by the way, that's a good boyfriend. This one. I like his economic policy anyway. But yes, the only reason Donald Trump is in a position to do this crazed tariff policy that he's put in place is because Congress wrote a law that said in an emergency, we're going to authorize the President of the United States to take certain economic actions. And frankly, most of us read the statute and think, I think they were talking about sanctions, but it's a little bit of ambiguity around it. And Donald Trump has simply seized that and said, great, I'm going to do tariffs up and down. The statute is quite clear. Congress can say, whoa, time out, no emergency here. And the minute Congress says that, it rolls back the authority that Donald Trump is using. And by the way, I just want to point out to everybody, the authority he's using, think about this. He has got to declare emergency in order to use it. Somebody's going to have to explain to me what our emergency is with France. What is our emergency right now with Japan? What is our emergency with Brazil, right? Just keep on going through the list. And the answer is they didn't find any emergency. Donald Trump has seized power. And all it takes is votes in the Senate. If we had a handful of Senate Republicans who'd grow a spine and stand up and say no to him, we could roll this whole thing back. Democrats are ready to go. The Republicans are the ones who are resisting it. So, yeah, we got the power. But the problem is with the Republicans in charge, they're just lying on the ground saying, Donald Trump, please roll over us.
Now, Senator.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I want to hear what you think, Senator Murphy. And also, are Republicans all on board with this? Are they considering ways to halt the tariffs?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump's voters are not all on board with this. I kind of describe it this way. A lot of folks out there who voted for Donald Trump, they thought that he was serious when he said he was going to lower costs.
Yeah.
And they thought that he wasn't serious when he said he was going to be a dictator on day one, right? That's just Trump being Trump. But Trump's going to take on costs. And it turns out that the opposite is true, that he wasn't serious about costs. He's actually driving up the cost of the things you pay for, and he's acting like a dictator. And so there's a lot of folks who voted for him who feel like they got cheated, like they feel like they got lied to. And a lot of those are Republican voters. Now, they will eventually put some pressure on Republican elected officials, but for the time being, as Elizabeth mentioned, the Republican congressional caucuses in the House and the Senate kind of act like a cult, right? Whatever the leader says, they do, even if it's hurting their own constituents. Now, eventually, you pay a price for that. That's how democracy works, but it operates like a cult. A couple just additional things to say. Elizabeth is right that they have to declare this emergency. And the backflips that they are doing to declare the emergency are just laughable. So one of the emergencies they had to declare was with Canada so that we could get into this dumb, nasty trade war with Canada. And what they declared was a fentanyl emergency. Now, there is a fentanyl emergency at the American border. It's just not that border. It's the Southwest border. Less than like 0.01% of the fentanyl coming to this country comes through the Canadian border. And so, they really can't come up with any of these justifications. It doesn't even pass the straight face test. The last thing to say is just on your Walmart point, right? Because this is going to start happening more and more. Walmart makes this big announcement, and that in some ways creates a permission structure for a lot of other big retailers to start passing along costs. And what we know is that there is a world in which targeted tariffs can work, but they have to be paired with two really important policies. One, domestic incentives for manufacturers, because you can't just create some of these industries out of whole cloth. The tariff alone won't do it. You have to have a little bit of incentive, industrial policy. And second, accountability for the corporations to make sure that they don't price gouge. The recent history of tariffs in the United States is one of corporations passing along the tariff plus, because they see it as an opportunity to just pad their profits. This is what the washing machine industry did in Trump's first term. He put tariffs on washing machine imports. The washing machine industry passed it along, and an extra 50%, just because they could. And so we're seeing already Walmart signaling prices are going to go up. You're going to see other retailers saying prices are going up, and they're not just going to pass along the tariff. They're going to pass along the tariff, and they're going to take advantage of the moment to make their shareholders even richer. So the corporations, in the end, many of them will come out fine here, and it'll just end up being the consumers and the overall health of the economy and families that are hurt. So for the time being, we have the tools to stop these tariffs, but until Republicans really feel the heat to break from their cult-like, daily actions, it's going to be difficult. And we just got to, sort of watch these price increase announcements closely, because there's going to be a whole bunch of gouging, and it's not going to be the Trump administration that's going to do anything about it. It's going to have to be, Democrats and activists and families out there who call out that gouging when they see it.
Now we get to do something fun. We're going to bring out all of our panelists. So Senator Warren and Dominique will be back. And we're going to go through these rapid fire questions. The first, I'll start with you, Senator Murphy. Which price hike as a result of the tariffs concerns you the most?
Oh, I mean, listen, they all concern me, but any price hikes on sort of essentials, food and medicine, the things that keep people alive, that's going to hurt the hardest, because that's lives at stake. That's just not livelihoods.
Mhm.
All right, Senator Warren, what say you? What price hike are you most concerned about?
Oh, I'm with Senator Murphy on this one. This is what worries me the most, is that it starts hitting, for example, groceries. What are people going to do? They still have to eat. And so they try to take it from every place else. And can I just add one? I just want to add one more turn of the crank on this. I went over today and met on the steps of the Capitol with a bunch of the fired federal workers, and just went around the group and was just asking, so what work were you doing? There was somebody there from the National Institute of Health who was talking about the work that she was doing. One of the people I asked was a man who said, oh, I'm one of the people who checks produce that comes in from other countries to make sure it's safe and doesn't have listeria and other things that make people sick. I mention this because it's not like changing the tariffs is happening at a moment when at least everything else is steady. You're firing the people who do the inspections. at the same time. Those things are going to hit together in ways that can be even harder on families. You cut the number of people working at the FDA. Where are the rest of the food inspectors? Where are the pharmaceutical inspectors? Where are the people who make sure that when you take that little white pill, it exactly is the antibiotic that it's supposed to be, and it was manufactured under clean circumstances, and that it is safe for you to take? So the tariff chaos is coming in on top of a lot of chaos around what's happening at our ports, what's happening in inspections, what's happening in trying to keep the trade system working in a way that's safe for families. So I'm just going to layer on to the point that Chris made, and that is what really scares me is around food and medicine more than anything. And then if I can have one more, it's around building supplies. We need more housing in this country. We need the stuff for repairs when hurricanes hit, when things fall down, when there are tornadoes. You start putting tariffs on all of that. And again, it means getting shelter over your head becomes even more expensive. And what was already a crisis becomes a crisis that literally costs us lives. So this is really big.
Now, before you hop on a plane, Dominique, I'll ask you, how many Barbies is the appropriate amount of Barbies for an American child?
Well, listen, I am a mom to amazing 3 and 5 year old toddlers. So, of course, the answer is there's no limit. It's not a limit. There's no such thing as too many Barbies, right? And I think that, there shouldn't be a limit on imagination, and the cost of childhood shouldn't be, expensive. It shouldn't be expensive for me. I have 2 kids. I need double the Barbies. I have to buy 2 Chelseas, 2 Barbies, 2 Kens, all the things. So I don't think there should be a limit whatsoever. No
Dominique
limit on fun
Broadway,
and joy.
thank you so much for joining us. I want
Thank
to
you for
go to
having me.
Senator Murphy. Let's see. Would you rather levy tariffs so all American consumers pay a little more for everything they buy, from groceries to appliances, or tax the rich?
These are really hard questions. You really put the screws to us here. Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
was going to give you the Barbie one.
It's the same answer. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's what makes all of this so offensive. The backdrop to the price increases on average families is that the billionaire class is getting a giant tax cut, is getting regulatory breaks, is getting exemptions from the tariffs. I mean, this story is a pretty simple one, right? This is turning our government over to the billionaire and corporate class, and stealing from all the rest of us. The stealing happens in a whole bunch of different ways. The theft is of our healthcare. This budget bill they're pushing through the Congress is going to rip healthcare away from 13 million Americans. The theft comes in corruption. When Elon Musk comes in and gets special access to the data about him and his competitors. Well, that's not a competitive economy. You're stealing competitiveness. You're stealing opportunities from the folks who don't have the access that Elon Musk has. And then the theft comes, when they are driving up prices for, regular families. Well, the billionaires, don't ever have to think about paying 10, 20, 30% more because it won't matter to them. It's a consequence of a billionaire mindset, right? I mean, you heard Donald Trump say it about the Barbies and the school supplies. I mean, they just never have ever had to think about how much their Christmas gifts cost or whether or not they're going to be able to afford, paper and pencils and notebooks for their kids in the fall. They've never had to rely on Medicaid, during a period of unemployment. Social Security isn't the way that they pay for retirement. When you've grown up with a silver spoon in your mouth, like Donald Trump has, and like a lot of the people around him, you just think differently than everybody else. For the rest of America, a 10%, 20% increase in your grocery bill, that's sort of the end of the year for you, right? I mean, that sort of then changes your day-to-day existence as a family. Because in order to put the food on the table, when you're literally living paycheck to paycheck, you're going to have to postpone paying that rent, and you're going to have bill collectors chasing you, and the interest on your credit card bill just accumulates, right? That experience of a 10 to 20% increase in food can fundamentally change your financial existence for a decade, for an American family. And a billionaire like Donald Trump just doesn't get that.
Senator Murphy, my ex-senator, thank you for talking tariffs with us. It was great to have you on.
Thanks.
Now, Senator Warren, if you could leave the folks on this call with one thing, one anecdote, what would that be?
I think the thing I would leave with is that these are tough times, really hard. And I'll be blunt, it's a lot worse than I thought it was going to be. I knew it would be bad, but wow, the things they're doing. This tax bill, for example, that they're rolling forward, you get a real insight about what happened, because when did they set up their vote? 10:30 on Sunday night, prime time for people watching. And they've set up the next vote as they move it forward for 1 a.m. on Wednesday. If you're really proud of what you're doing, you turn the lights on. You try to do it when you can let a lot of people participate. So right now, what I see is the very story of how the Republicans are relentlessly rolling forward on what they want to do, but even they know that it's not popular. Even they know that they are driving this economy over a cliff. Donald Trump, when he's tweeting at Walmart, he's trying to hold back the wave that is coming his way. All of us, we need to use that energy. It's happening right now. The Republicans can feel it. I know people get aggravated with the Democrats. Believe me, I get aggravated with the Democrats, but mostly nobody's chasing us off the stage for trying to take away their health care. Nobody is shouting us down at town halls because we've disappeared people off the streets. Nobody's coming after us saying, what the hell? You promised that you were going to lower my costs, and this is what you're doing to this country. So I think of this as a moment when Republicans and Democrats are actually beginning to see the same thing. And that is that what Donald Trump and these Republicans in Congress are doing is a disaster for this country. And every day that goes by, it gets worse. That means this is our time to speak out. This is our time to talk with people about what's happening. This is our time to frame the narrative. This is our time to stay in the fight, because right now is when we make clear that everyone understands that the reason those prices are going up, Donald Trump. The reason that people are staring down the barrel of losing health care for little babies, for seniors, for people with disabilities, is Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress, all so that they can hand this country over to a handful of billionaires. For a long time, people have talked about Democrats aren't clear about their message. I got to say, right now, all we got to do is tell the truth. Republicans have made clear what they're doing. Billionaires win, everybody else loses. That's what the Republicans are driving, and that's what we need. That's the story, both in the specific and the general, that we need to be out there telling every day.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, thank you for talking tariffs with us and learning how to use a Wi-Fi hotspot to do it. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's always good to be with you.
And Senator Warren is absolutely right. But the good news is there's a hell of a lot more of us than there are of them, which is why we're asking everyone to go to moveon.org/action. Send a letter to your representatives calling on them to take legislative action against these Trump tariffs. Thank you all for joining the call. We will see you next time. We will see you on moveon.org/action.